Britain's Chancellor Rachel Reeves is promising government support as heating oil costs spiral out of control across the nation. The Treasury chief announced today that officials are actively examining different options to assist households most vulnerable to the soaring energy bills that have left millions struggling to heat their homes. Reeves emphasized that the government recognizes the severe financial pressure facing families, particularly those in rural areas who depend on heating oil rather than mains gas connections. The Chancellor's intervention comes as energy costs continue to surge globally, driven by international market volatility and supply chain pressures. Rural communities, often overlooked in previous energy support schemes, face particular hardship as heating oil prices have increased dramatically over recent months. This crisis affects approximately 1.5 million UK households who rely on oil heating systems. The Treasury's review of support options signals potential emergency measures that could include targeted subsidies or expanded winter fuel assistance programs, as the government scrambles to prevent a humanitarian crisis this winter. A grim milestone has been reached in the French Alps as avalanche deaths among skiers this season have now exceeded 100 fatalities, marking one of the deadliest winters on record. French rescue teams are pointing to dangerous weather conditions combined with inadequately prepared skiers as the deadly combination driving this tragic surge in mountain casualties. The BBC joined rescue operations firsthand, witnessing the challenging conditions that have claimed so many lives across the Alpine region. Rescue professionals report that many victims were skiing off-piste without proper avalanche safety equipment or sufficient knowledge of mountain conditions. Unstable snow conditions, created by unusual weather patterns this winter, have made backcountry skiing particularly treacherous throughout the Alps. This crisis extends beyond France, affecting the entire Alpine region that attracts millions of winter sports enthusiasts annually from around the world. Mountain rescue services are now calling for mandatory avalanche training and equipment checks, as the death toll continues climbing with several weeks of ski season remaining and weather forecasts showing continued instability. Britain's independent ethics advisor has firmly rejected conservative demands for an investigation into the Prime Minister's controversial appointment of Lord Mandelson as ambassador. Sir Laurie Magnus concluded today that the relevant appointment processes appear to have been properly followed when the former Labour minister was selected for the prestigious diplomatic role. The Conservatives had called for a formal inquiry, arguing that Lord Mandelson's appointment raised serious questions about political favoritism and conflicts of interest given his extensive business connections and previous government roles. However, Magnus determined that standard procedures were adhered to throughout the selection process, effectively dismissing opposition concerns about impropriety. This decision represents a significant victory for the Prime Minister, who had faced intense pressure over the high-profile appointment of the veteran politician known as the Prince of Darkness. Lord Mandelson's selection had sparked controversy due to his complex history and international business relationships. The ethics advisor's ruling now clears the way for Mandelson to assume his ambassadorial duties without the cloud of a formal investigation hanging over the appointment. Independent fuel retailer Goran Raven is speaking out about the disturbing abuse his staff endure daily as frustrated customers lash out over soaring oil prices beyond his control. Raven describes the higher oil prices as horrific for his business operations, emphasizing that independent retailers like himself are suffering alongside their customers rather than profiteering from the crisis. His employees face verbal harassment and aggressive confrontations from motorists who blame local stations for the global price surge, creating a hostile work environment across the fuel retail sector. The retailer's testimony highlights a troubling trend where frontline workers bear the brunt of public anger over economic pressures they cannot influence. Independent fuel stations operate on razor-thin profit margins and often struggle more than major chains during price volatility periods. This situation reflects broader economic tensions as households and businesses grapple with persistent inflation affecting essential services worldwide. Raven's experience illustrates how global market forces create local conflicts, as communities direct their frustration at the most visible targets rather than the complex international factors actually driving fuel costs higher across all markets. Britain's hereditary peers are seizing what may be their final opportunity to maintain influence in the House of Lords as the Conservative Party selects which 15 will survive in a controversial compromise deal. The Tories face the complex task of choosing from dozens of hereditary peers who have held their positions through birthright rather than merit or election, as parliamentary reform finally catches up with centuries-old traditions. This selection process represents a last-ditch effort to preserve some hereditary representation before broader Lords reform potentially eliminates these positions entirely. The compromise agreement allows a small number of hereditary peers to retain their seats, while the majority face removal from Britain's upper parliamentary chamber. These peer positions have long been criticized as anachronistic remnants of feudal privilege that have no place in modern democratic governance. The selection battle has created unprecedented competition among hereditary peers who previously took their positions for granted. This development signals the beginning of the end for one of Britain's most controversial parliamentary traditions, as democratic reforms gradually modernize the House of Lords to better reflect contemporary British society and values.